Okay, Brayden, before we actually start, I want to give you a chance to defend yourself because in the last podcast, we all talked about whether or not we had actually listened to episodes of the podcast. Bailey said she had not because she said she did not like to hear herself talk. Nate said that he had just started listening on Spotify, and I said that after editing for 6 hours, typically a week, and listening to our voices, that we all sound like clucking chickens at that point. So no, after I hit publish, I don't listen to it anymore. So Brayden, do you listen or have you listened to any of our podcast episodes?
I put them on. I put them on when I go to sleep so that way we rack up views. But I just feel weird listening to conversations I've already had.
Okay.
Personally, Grandma, she's told me that she's listened to them and she likes them. For me to talk during, and then they're for other people to enjoy. That's how I feel about it.
I was listening to the one with Lily the other day, and I was kind of sad that me and Brayden weren't there to chime in about the X-Files, because I remember that was my jam there for a little while. Until I did 5 or 6.
I did say that even though I did not watch it, that's one of the reasons why I brought it up, is because I said I knew a lot of people in my life who were very into X-Files and that they would be ashamed of me if I did not bring it up. So I brought it up.
To your credit, you did bring it up, and I was like, oh man, I could have chimed in on at least 5 freaking awesome episodes, but that's cool. That's all good.
I do want to listen to the one where we talk about the scariest movies from our childhood again. I will listen to that again. I had so much fun doing that one, and I loved all of your guys' stories. I know at some point I'll listen to that again.
Uh-huh.
But I would have to be like another very special episode like that to me. I don't know. That to me will always be like a time capsule that, when I'm older, I can listen to it again.
Do you want to know something really funny about that episode? We talked about this, but it was off camera. But we recorded that for an hour and 32 minutes, I think. And after I edited out all the stuff where we just went on wild tangents into something else, it was 37 minutes in length.
Well, can you send me the full one?
I haven't deleted any of our full stuff. I even have our unaired original pilot where we're echoing really bad.
Oh yeah, I don't want to hear that.
No.
That means we'll have to do like another episode where we talk about the pros and cons of Midnight Hour.
The episodes get better, I promise. Okay, let's get started, gentlemen. So, welcome, nostalgians, to another 90s Halloween throwback episode of the 90s Rewind Report. I'm Michael Reagan, and I'm joined by co-host Nathan Lane, and Brayden Decker is back. And today, we're diving back into the 90s to celebrate the Halloween spirit through the lens of nostalgia. Each host has picked a favorite Halloween-themed episode from their beloved shows, and it's Brayden's turn to take us on a bone-chilling journey. So get ready for some thrilling tales, retro laughs, and a dash of eerie magic as we explore Brayden's choice. So before we get into your choice, Brayden, what influenced your decision to pick this episode for your Halloween selection?
I'm just a huge fan of Pete and Pete, and this is one of the episodes I remember most from my childhood of Pete and Pete. This is like a big standout.
Okay.
That's legit. I mean, Pete and Pete was just, it was that cornucopia that just encompassed all what it was to be a child in the 90s.
Yeah, and it's a fun show to grow up with, because as you get older, all of a sudden you get into the Stooges, and like Iggy Pop is in this episode, or like you get into
the Michael Stipe cameo.
Michael Stipe. There's a trillion, not to mention like Polaris doing the music. Like then when you get older, it's like you love the soundtrack, and then you go back and listen to their previous band Miracle Legion, which is great. Magnetic Fields is another one of my favorite bands, and they do some of the a side project of Magnetic Fields, just some of the music for some of the other episodes. Like I remember in middle school, once it was like it became harder to find Pete and Pete episodes. Watching them, it started. I remember being nostalgic for 5 years earlier watching them. Just like the vibe of the show is so like it just reminds you of how mysterious childhood can be because it's basically just Twin Peaks for kids.
Just that weird surreal edge to it.
Yeah,
It's like, this is how kids see the world because nothing is solid and familiar.
Yeah, and it's like genuine surrealism.
Well, before we get way too into it, we should probably let the listeners know what episode we're talking about. In the spirit of the seasons, and we have rewatched the season 2 episode, Halloweenie. The episode originally aired on October 30th, 1994, and stars Michael Morona and Danny Tamborelli as Big Pete and Little Pete, respectively. The episode was written by Will McRobb and Chris Viscardi and was directed by Peter Lauer. And if you guys would like to watch along, the episode is available on YouTube for free, and we'll share a link on our socials so you guys can watch it. In this episode, the storyline revolves around the titular characters Pete and Pete Wrigley as they prepare for Halloween. The eldest Pete, who is known for his more serious demeanor, experiences a sense of dread about the holiday, especially as he is haunted by a traumatic childhood experience involving a spooky costume and the neighborhood bully. Little Pete is looking to solidify his place as a legend by breaking the record for most houses hit in one single night of trick-or-treating. The previous Wellsville record was 374 houses. The episode captures the essence of Halloween while delving into deeper themes of bravery and self-acceptance, as well as the complexities of growing up are explored through their contrasting perspectives. So I have a quick question. We watched Pete and Pete as kids. Halloween was one of our favorite holidays. Did we ever set a record for ourselves?
Well, I was actually thinking about this the other day. We really kind of did this one little horseshoe section of the nicer side of town.
Mm-hmm.
But we never really expanded upon that. I think it wasn't our doing. It was more like our parents like, no, you've got enough.
Yeah, we had until a specific time. Was it 8:30 or 9?
It was like 9 or something.
And then we were done.
I do remember wanting to keep going.
Well, obviously, we would have gone till we would have gone till the lights went off if they let us.
If there was a record, I would have wanted to break it.
That's true. We live in a very boring town. There aren't many records here to break, to be honest.
I think that's the only reason. Is like we were that generation where the parents are like, nah, razor blades in the apples, blah blah blah. We got to monitor these children. And so we were just short of being on a leash for the most part. It's like, slow down, not too far. Don't go around that corner. So I just feel like even if there was a record, there's no way our parents would have just allowed it.
I just wanted to let Brayden know because we had been talking in our group chat, but when I first watched this and I saw how much you guys loved it, and while I was watching it, I thought, wow, they are some Halloweenies. And then I thought, and when I told Brayden, I could tell by his response that Brayden thought I was the weenie.
What did I say?
I said, this should be an interesting discussion. And you said, yes, it should. I cannot wait. But you put no punctuation and you put no capitalization.
Oh.
Like you just turned to stare at him. It's like, yes.
It was just like a blasé response.
In all fairness, I've been very busy making a short film. So pretty much anytime I texted anybody about something that wasn't the short film, it was pretty blasé.
We'll dive into the opening scene, and this is where we find the eldest Pete talking about the magical night Halloween, when bedtimes disappear and identities change, when the ghouls and goblins of our souls are set free to roam the night and scarf candy, and that to true believers, Halloween is the ultimate holiday. But to the eldest Pete, it's the ultimate dork holiday because Halloween is for Halloweenies.
Okay, I want to pause right there for just a sec because I love the intros to Pete and Pete episodes. But this particular monologue is one of the best summaries of childhood Halloween bliss since Ray Bradbury narrated the beginning of the Halloween tree.
But that's why I had to type it word for word. I was like, how do I summarize this? And I was like, you can't. So I typed it pretty much word for word.
I know, and you did a fantastic job of narrating it because it just brings it all together for you. It's like just all the memories like of what you think about as Halloween is just like boom. Good job, Pete Wrigley.
When I watched the second time around, the opening and his narration, along with all the visualization, is when my nostalgia kicked back in, and I was back in 1994. And then I told Brayden, I was like, then I watched it a third time and a fourth time and a fifth time.
I remember watching it that first time, October 30th, 1994, and just like, boom. Because it was still in that season where every day at school you're getting bombarded. What are you dressing up as and all this? But I don't know. I think back then we were all about Halloween and not too worried about being Halloweenies. It's not a dork holiday, Big Pete.
Brayden, this was your episode. How do you feel about that opening where the eldest Pete thinks that Halloween is the ultimate dork holiday and it's for Halloweenies?
Big Pete is, how old is his character in the show? Like 14, 15?
14. I think is he 14 or 15? Because Ned Richmond was 15, and when they we'll get to that later. But
yeah, but I feel like in the either second season or third season he was going out for his driver's license, so I would bet 15ish.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
When I was his age, I definitely was in a conflicted area with Halloween because you can't trick or treat anymore. Which, I mean, like, I stopped. I think the last time I trick or treated, I was 14 years old, and I didn't have a great costume. I just kind of threw something together last minute.
Mm-hmm. That was me every year.
And I went with my little sister and my family, and the vibes were off. Like all throughout middle school, it's like my greatest Halloween memories are before I was 11 years old. And then after I was 11 years old, it was just trying to hold on to this thing. And like, so yeah, like I don't judge Big Pete at all for having like just decided to just shun Halloween. Because you can't, no one's having, I mean, I know I've seen them in movies and stuff, and teenagers aren't having great Halloween parties.
No.
That's something, it's like, Halloween sucks when you're in high school. There's nothing to do, and you're just, and it's depressing because you remember it so well. It gets more fun after you turn, maybe I didn't go to college, but maybe after college or after you turn 21, and then you get to go to parties where you are drinking and you're with other people who are dressed up and all that stuff. It becomes fun again. Or if you have children,
the bar parties and the grown-up parties,
right?
It's like my kids are just still at prime trick-or-treating age, so it's like, oh, look at them, look at the costumes, like all the great decorations again. Where was this? And it's like, oh yeah, I didn't give a damn in my 20s.
Right. But I mean, it absolutely makes sense that Big Pete is feels about it the way he does. I don't judge him at all.
Well, then let's take a look through Little Pete's perspective, because he then jumps out of a pile of leaves wearing a Halloween mask in an attempt to scare his older brother, Pete. Little Pete proclaims he scared his brother because he blinked, only for the eldest Pete to say wrong. The eldest Pete's narration continues as he asks himself what happened to his Halloween spirit, and once a person loses it, can they ever get it back? And we just actually had a conversation about that. And yes, you do eventually get it back if you lose it. I really see why you and Brayden love this so much. And I don't want to get into a huge therapy talk about it, but there's a lot of back then, there was a lot of the eldest Pete in Nathan, because you were, I guess, the wiser one of the bunch of us. And then Brayden being the youngest, he really was like the little Pete, especially because he was really rebellious. So
Where do you put yourself in that, Michael?
I wasn't really there, I guess. I don't.
You were there.
I was the mom with the plate in the head. Okay. Which brings me to our intro credits. So first off, let me say that rewatching this, the intro credits, that instantly took me back to 1994 as well. And I forgot that they were introduced as their character names and not the actors' names.
Mom's Plate.
And thank you. I was just about to get to that. That was awesome. So it shows. Yep. It shows Mom's credit, and then the following scene is a photo of an X-ray, which shows a metal plate and a skull, and is credited as Mom's Plate. The youngest Pete's tattoo, as Brayden just said, also gets a credit as Petunia. But I have a question, because I don't remember anything else about Pete and Pete. And I think some of it was coming back to me, but is the mom the equivalent to, let's say, Cousin Eddie in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation? Is that why she named her eldest and her youngest child Pete?
No.
I don't believe so. Because I love the mom, and she's a very strong character at times.
So
I might not always agree with her parenting, but
So she doesn't piss herself and black out every time that they turn the microwave on.
No. There are
No.
totally moments where certain power tools and stuff will mess with her, and she's got to wear padding.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like there
I
was
think she
one
does it. She
episode
receives
where
radio stations. Yeah.
someone was blasting polka music and it was driving her insane or something.
Yeah.
Oh no, it
No,
came
she's
up
the
so
kind of
many
mom
wonderful
that
times.
inspires their children to be more creative. I feel like their mom is just very her own person. The
Okay.
dad is a much more kind of conservative, kind of classic dad archetype. But
It's like
the mom is
bumbling, no
very,
nonsense.
yeah, the yard. He's obsessed with his yard. He has his metal detector, which is how he met the mother.
Oh, that was such a lovely story.
But the mom is definitely the type of mom that inspires her kids to become, like musicians and artists and stuff. I imagine if Big Pete and Little Pete don't grow up to be artists and musicians, that they are total appreciators of arts.
During scene 1, we again find Big Pete contemplating what makes Halloween so special to some kids, and he knows the most important thing to his younger brother Pete is immortality, or as it's known in Wellsville, the record, set 31 years ago by Greg and Judy Stilp, trick-or-treated to 374 houses in one night, and by midnight, they were legends. And then the following scene shows Little Pete talking to his friend Nona, played by a young Michelle Trachtenberg, how he just wanted one more shot to break the record. But Big Pete has given up this year because he is too old and a group of bullies called the Pumpkin Eaters had ousted a 15-year-old named Ned Richmond for trick-or-treating, and now no one will even talk to him. Nona tells little Pete that the goddess Athena wouldn't give up, and neither will she, as she draws her own petunia tattoo onto her arm with a marker, which was kind of cute, actually.
That was adorable, yeah.
With his friend's help, little Pete regains hope of breaking the record and begins to prepare his plan for Halloween night. We see little Pete making his jack-o'-lantern because to him, Halloween isn't just a holiday, it's a holy day. And the jack-o'-lantern gives thanks to the Halloween gods. In the next scene, we see little Pete attaching a fog machine to the back of his jack-o'-lantern. I thought that was very cool.
Oh, that was pimpalicious.
And we see crossing guard Frank Gulcher, who refers to little Pete as Chief and informs him that if the Pumpkin Eaters wreak havoc again this Halloween, as they had in the past when they destroyed decorations and smashed jack-o'-lanterns, that Halloween may be canceled in Wellsville indefinitely.
I love that they just latched onto that 90s trope. It's like, this could be the last Halloween. I don't know how that's possible for it to exist outside of Wellsville. This must be the last. But if it's Frank Gulcher, I mean, it's got to be some hardcore news because he was like the police authority figure of the Pete and Pete world. I loved about like early season, like season 1 Frank Gulcher, when I think it's the New Year's episode where Pete's trying to get past him and he's just chain smoking cigarettes. Like, what's up, Chief? You're not getting through this way. And it's like, wow, he really is like the only like film noir cop in Wellsville.
In the next scene, we see Big Pete walking with his friend when they stumble upon a graveyard of smashed jack-o'-lanterns, with the exception of one lone survivor. Pete picks up the jack-o'-lantern and contemplates throwing it, thinking to himself how it used to anger him when he saw the smashed pumpkins on Halloween. But at the insistence of his friend, he throws the pumpkin to the ground, smashing it. Unknown to Big Pete, the Pumpkin Eaters were watching the entire scene play out while hiding in a garage. So I'm assuming it's implied that they left the lone pumpkin to see if anyone else would smash it so they could recruit new pumpkin eaters.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of weird that they were just relying on that one pumpkin in a town that's apparently littered with jack-o'-lanterns.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this will be the one. We will know when this one is smashed.
I do love in this part whenever he picks up the jack-o'-lantern and it cuts to a shot of him doing the exact same thing at night.
I know it's like he's all like behind him is darkness.
Yeah.
It's like the blackening of Pete Wrigley's soul.
Yeah, it's a neat flourish. I like that.
The following scene shows the Pumpkin Eaters having their self-proclaimed weenie roast by committing their usual pre-Halloween night misdemeanors, including attacking the Wrigley house and smashing Little Pete's pumpkin in front of him. That was devastating. leaving Little Pete angry, Big Pete feeling guilty for smashing the pumpkin earlier, believing the Halloween gods were now punishing his younger brother for his actions, and Mom feeling confused at the situation, I'm assuming again because of the plate in her head. I do love that line when she's like, why would someone do this? I don't understand. While there's people running around her yard, like toilet papering it and throwing eggs at her door. Anyway.
Well, this kind of like made me think of something the last time I was watching it. It's impressive that these 4 punks are just going around completely devastating an entire town.
And crossing guard Frank Bilcher is the only one who's following them. But go ahead.
Yes. No, I was like sitting there, I was like, why is Frank the only person? Like the police are nowhere to be seen, and it actually made me wonder, where the hell is Artie?
Oh,
like all this chaos is going on his turf. He's supposed to be like protecting Little Pete Wrigley, because this is before the Farewell My Little Viking.
Yeah.
So it feels like on Mischief Night, Artie, the strongest man in the world, needs to be on duty. I don't know. He definitely let down his Little Viking.
Yeah, I think Toby Huss just must have.
I had to actually look because I'm like, where was he in that season? And apparently he was doing a lot of voiceover work and like cameo work. Because at the same time he was already the strongest man in the world, he was also doing voices on Beavis and Butthead.
Okay.
Starting his voiceover work and still carrying it on today. Very, very good on Toby Huss. Sorry, taking you off on a non sequitur there.
You're good. Well, in the following scene, known as Pop, who doesn't seem like the brightest bulb, states that he'd be an idiot to let his daughter go trick-or-treating after the stunt the pumpkin eaters pulled the night prior. Nona, not taking the news well, stands up, storms inside the house, and slams the door. Love hurts, known as Pop declares, as he goes right back to raking the leaves in his yard.
Best lines in that whole episode.
I'm assuming the implication is Nona's dad has always been stupid, and I'm forgetting that fact.
Well, he is a stooge.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, from the band, literally. But okay. Then yeah, that's very, very funny.
No, I was like,
yeah.
Love hurts. Oh, give me danger, little stranger.
Well, later, seeing the disappointment in his youngest brother Pete, the eldest Pete decides to go trick-or-treating with his brother once more so they can try to break the record together as they had every year prior. So Big Pete's friend Ellen tries to talk him out of it by reminding him about the fate of poor Ned Richmond, and that if he is caught by the pumpkin eaters, he will be branded Halloweenie for the rest of his life. A little dramatic, but okay. Big Pete's mind is made up, and he is determined to help Little Pete.
Okay. See, that's a bro right there. It's like, it might get me labeled a Halloweenie forever, but I got you, bro. It's like,
and he's hiding behind like the most extreme mask.
Oh no, it's definitely one of those like, who is that under there? Let me see you there and pinch your cheeks and give you a peanut butter kiss.
So, according to Little Pete, breaking the record was the equivalent to landing on the moon. So, in the spirit, Big Pete and Little Pete dress as astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to be specific, which Big Pete is relieved because he can hide his face with the helmet, and Little Pete was just happy he could relieve himself in his spacesuit. Ew, that was my first thought, too. Even as a kid watching that, I'm sure that was our first thought was ew.
It's like, you mean it's in there with him? What's going on here?
Here Brayden is thinking, wow, that was some ingenuity right there.
I mean, I don't think if you could do it, you would. No one's gonna know.
I'll never tell.
The two set off with a map that Little Pete had created that had the safest routes to avoid the pumpkin eaters and to ensure they could trick-or-treat at more than 374 houses by midnight. As they reached house 115, Big Pete's Halloween spirit returned. Things continued going well for them until they reached around house 203, where the pumpkin eaters were gaining on them. Although the residents of Wellsville turned off their porch lights, they didn't let the spirit of Halloween die, just becoming more crafty in the way they would deliver their candy. With one house even somehow sending the candy out of their gutter for trick-or-treaters, which reminded me of something that you would see in The Grinch.
I was going to say, it was quite an ingenuitive. It's like, that's what shut-ins need to do for Halloween. So they can still be involved.
With only 6 blocks to go, Big Pete became overly confident until they knocked on one house's door, and who should answer but Ned Richmond, who recognizes Big Pete, referring to him as Wriggles. And that was my
Sorry.
no. I cracked up when I was saying, yeah, I cracked up too. And says maybe next year he and Pete can go trick-or-treating together. Mortified, Big Pete declares he is giving up on the record and going home, and tries to convince his younger brother to join him. But little Pete, now fueled by anger of Big Pete's betrayal, is determined now more than ever to beat the record, even if he has to do it alone.
See, I wish I could have been there to like encourage Big Pete. It's like, no, you don't understand. Ned was dressed in a sailor suit. He was asking for it.
That's true.
I want to give credit to that actor who plays Ned Richmond, because this character is supposed to be like this giant goober. And I imagine as a teenager, not every teenager wants to play a giant goober. They usually just want to play somebody who looks cool or something. But he just like leans into this role so hard, with the winking and like the nudging and like I don't know. I don't know who this actor is, but
when he just like jumps in from side screenia, it's like, "Olay!"
Yeah, he has probably more fun acting than anybody else in this whole show in this one scene. He just so leans into it. He's a brave actor.
Lark Spies is the actor's name. I just Googled it for us. So shout out to Lark Spies.
You're the man, Lark.
Oh, yes. He was also in Star Trek Enterprise. I don't know what his role was. Okay.
He was also Derek Blank on Strangers with Candy.
Oh.
Was he really?
Yeah.
That's the stepbrother. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See, that's the one we latched onto. And it's just like Strangers with Candy. I totally remember him now.
I told you
he was a boozer, a user, and a loser.
Well done, Amy Setters.
I want to see a Lark Spies.
So funny. Actually, Brayden bought me that DVD set one year.
Oh, no. Good early Stephen Colbert, back when that man was completely insane.
Maybe we can get an interview with Stephen Colbert.
Got to talk about Lord of the Rings.
Someone messaged the CBS Twitter account.
I like Brayden's way of thinking. If you're going to dream big.
We had Stephen Colbert, Jon Stewart, and John Oliver.
Joe Bob Briggs. Joe Bob Briggs is actually on the top of that list.
Oh, no. He's numero uno, just looking down like, one of these days, boys.
I follow him on Twitter, and he's always tweeting about like fan cons and all sorts of things that he's doing. So he's a very busy person, apparently.
When you're a legend, everybody wants a piece of it.
Yeah. And he might want money. I'm sorry, Mr. Joe Bob Briggs. We're not at the point to pay you more than like a couple of bucks, and we have some Halloween candy right now.
Throw you a few bucks in gas.
Yeah. And all the respect in the world. You'd have all the respect in the world, obviously.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, back to Pete and Pete here. We got a little off track. That was my fault, too. That one was me. As little Pete continues his attempt of legend status, Big Pete is spotted by the pumpkin eaters and is chased into a haunted house by the bullies, where he is captured. Little Pete, using the walkie-talkie and his astronaut helmet, informs Big Pete that he is only one house away, and after this, he'll be a legend. And I can't remember what he tells Big Pete. He'll be a blowhole?
Probably. He did like the blowholes.
I think he said, "Hey, blowhole, I'm only one house away from breaking the record, and then I'll be a legend. And you know what you'll be? You'll still be a blowhole." I'm pretty sure that's what he says.
I would lay money on it. That sounds like something Little Pete would say.
Little Pete overhears the pumpkin eaters talking to Big Pete. The pumpkin eaters tell Big Pete they witnessed his little smashing pumpkin session and were impressed. They want him to smash yet another lone surviving pumpkin. I don't get that theme. To help them end Halloween forever. And I also don't get how Pete smashing the last pumpkin versus them smashing the last pumpkin would make Halloween.
It's really a flawed system. But it's endless Mike Hellstrom in that pumpkin. So, I mean, who the hell?
Spoiler alert.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Like halfway through the episode.
If people are listening to... Exactly, but if people are listening to this and they haven't watched it, then I don't know what to tell them.
Yeah, I was going to say we're blowing this thing apart, but in the most interesting way.
Well, Big Pete asks them what will happen if he refuses, And the lead pumpkin eater proclaims the name that has haunted us the entire episode, Ned Richmond. He then tells Pete he knew that he wanted to do it and that he hated Halloween just like them. He tells him no one is looking, to which Big Pete replies, sorry to hear that, and throws the pumpkin at the leader of the pumpkin eaters, which in turn smashes the mask and reveals the leader of the pumpkin heads to be none other than, who is it, Nathan?
Endless Mike
Endless
Elstrom.
Mike.
Yep. And then he says, what'd you expect, Carrot Top, Mr. Tasty?
It's like an awesome name drop.
What is, I'm not picking on this show. I'm not. Bailey mentioned this in Halloween Town. I mentioned this about Boy Meets World. What is it about the bullies in 90s movies being just like 1950s greasers?
I think it's just that staple where you're just like, the bad guy's always got to be that, man, I'm too cool for that attitude.
It is updated here where he has the messy hair.
That's right, Will. Is it also where the writers at the time would have been, I guess, growing up on that content? So by the time they were writing, the content they grew up on were these shows with these greasers on them.
Yeah,
so
these writers grew up reading S.C. Hinton,
Yeah.
But like at the same time, I guess like since we grew up on it and our generation's writing the new Disney stuff, like even like the new Disney original like villains have that edge about them. But you are right. It's always just been that personification of like, nah. It's like I just gotta have that kind of dirty look about me.
Yeah.
I just crawled out from underneath the motor.
Yeah. Don't forget Roger Klotz.
Hey, funny.
There were plenty of double features of Pete and Doug episodes at this time.
Oh, Roger Klotz. Good name drop there, too.
Well, after the leader of the pumpkin eaters, God, I've said that so many times. I hope no one plays a drinking game with that being the words of choice.
I'm already waiting.
Drinker, pumpkin eater.
It's revealed. Oh, good to know. I was wondering why you weren't that talkative. Endless Mike is revealed to be the leader. So crossing guard Frank Gulcher and Little Pete arrive just in time to detain the pumpkin eaters. And Little Pete hits Endless Mike in the head with his trick-or-treat bag and then headbutts him.
Oh, don't forget the line he says right before he gets him. It's like, trick or treat, gut bucket.
Oh, thank you. I forgot about that.
Another fantastic line.
Well, then Mike jumps onto Little Pete, and Big Pete throws another jack-o'-lantern at Mike, which, upon landing on his head, gets stuck.
See, now they're just like spawning jack-o'-lanterns. I thought that last one was the last.
No.
It's like the plot falls apart in the final act.
Any thoughts on that scene, Brayden? This was your episode. Any thoughts on it?
Well, I do think it's funny that the guy, like Endless Mike, spends the entire episode with his head in a pumpkin, and his final line in the episode is, "No more pumpkins."
No more pumpkins. Well, Big Pete declares it was a night for heroes. And the next day, we see the unmasked pumpkin eaters cleaning up the town as part of the punishment for their crimes. And although they didn't break the record, Little Pete wasn't disappointed because he and his older brother had saved Halloween for another year in Wellsville. And the episode ends.
I always do one of those things where I pay attention to how long it takes from A to B to something or other, to see how everything flows together.
Mm-hmm.
But watching that final scene where Endless Mike is basically monologuing Big Pete, and Little Pete catches the edge of it, and he's just like, "Oh, crud!" And he knows he's got to go save his brother and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But from the moment that it starts cutting in to the point where they kick open the basement door and just face punt Endless Mike with a bag full of candy, it's like less than 2 minutes. So unless that house was like across the street.
Well, hold up. Be honest here for a second. If you were Little Pete and you were just that one house away, which was in the background, would you immediately run to save Big Pete, which would be, I guess, one of us in the other situation? Whoever you are, would be one of the other two of us. Or would you run to that other house real quick and get your last piece of candy and break the record too?
You see, I thought about that.
So
brought up interesting conflictions, but I was like, damn it, you know what? If it was either one of you guys and you were like right across the way, I was like, you know what? let's go kick this thing in the willy, and then we'll go across the street and get that last piece of candy. But what's crazy is they didn't do it.
No,
It's like,
they
it
didn't.
never got to that point where it's like, I appreciate you bailing me out there, little brother.
They
Now let's
were
go get that record.
Little Pete was satisfied because he knew he had another year to break the record because they had caught the pumpkin eaters. So he saved Halloween.
So next year, Big Pete's going to go with him and feel like a super Halloween.
Yeah, there's no pumpkin eaters out anymore to shame anybody from trick-or-treating beyond the age of 14 or 15.
So you'll have like Pete's dad out there next year. Wrigley, who are you supposed to be? Why, this year I'm Artie, the strongest man in the world.
Okay, I do have a couple of more interview questions for Brayden. So, Brayden, what nostalgic memories come into your mind when you watch this particular episode of Pete and Pete?
I remember doing the horseshoe where we used to trick or treat and not wanting to leave. And every year kind of feeling like, maybe not like directly thinking it out loud, but yeah, like I was breaking some sort of record for myself. Just trying to outdo every year. Trying my costumes.
It's like just push it a little further.
You
like I
always
remember the last great Halloween
costumes.
I had, I was the Headless Horseman. And it was like my
remember.
costume, I was headless. Yeah. Every year just trying to be like, how do I outdo my costume this year?
And you were really proud of your costumes too, because I remember when you were a Power Ranger and you fell and you hit your knee, and you were perfectly fine that you hit your knee. But when you realized that you had ripped the knee, like the pants of your suit, you were mad.
Yeah. Do you remember when I was Luke Skywalker?
I do.
And like I was like Halloween 97, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It was the special editions had just come out. And I broke my arm like right before Halloween.
Oh, I forgot.
And I was the thing I was most upset about was that as Luke Skywalker, I would have my broken arm. I should have realized that Luke is missing a hand, but I was Luke in the first movie. I was Luke in New Hope. I wasn't Luke in Return of the Jedi.
You were no.
And I didn't have that costume ready. If we had known in advance, I could have just gotten the black costume from Return of the Jedi. But yeah, I always took my costumes really seriously.
Do you want to know one thing that totally changed my perspective on watching this episode? Is there was one Halloween when I had decided I was not going to trick or treat anymore. I was done, and then Mama said that Brayden was on the phone, and I talked to Brayden, and Brayden, you pretty much begged me to go. You're like, this can be the last one. This can be just come, because it was me, you, and Nathan, and I think Nathan was already saying this was going to be the last year he was trick or treating.
Yeah.
Even though I think that was a lie. I think we both lied.
Last Halloween, damn it!
But last minute,
you're like
yeah,
a '90s Michael Jordan.
I had to throw.
No, this is the last year.
Well, I had to throw together a costume that year, and then I did go.
Well, that was just like Bailey a year for just like, hey, let's just do this one last time. We're goofy teenagers. Why not?
I think that was the last year I went was with you and Melvin. I'm pretty sure. All right, Brayden, I've got one more question for you here. It's actually a personal question, but we talked about this in another podcast. So every time that I have to send out our email for our studio link to record, and I look at your email address, Nate and I were wondering this because it sounds kind of like a name. I'm sorry, adult film star name. Film star name. So
I wasn't thinking that.
I'm not going to say the name of your email address, but what inspired that name?
Well, to answer that, I would give away the name of my email address.
Okay.
Want me to do it like off the air?
I'm kind of curious about this email address.
No.
I can tell you, it's a reference to two different references that I combined into one.
Okay. That's all you guys say. Okay.
All right.
That was
anybody who wants to hack my email. Michael's got you. I have a little fan theory about Pete and Pete, which is not like the happiest theory, but I think that there might only actually be one brother and the other brother is imagining him.
Okay, please continue.
Big Pete is always talking about Little Pete like he's this incredible legend, and it's totally like possible He's an only child, and he's just fantasizing his brother up. And then also have to remember that Artie, the strongest man in the world, is absolutely very likely an imaginary friend. And it's also, with Little Pete's imagination, probably most likely that it's Little Pete making up Big Pete and Artie.
Well,
he could be imagining.
It's Fight Club. It's Fight Club for kids.
So he's a narcissist because he's making up
gosh.
a big brother who builds him up to be a legend. Okay. And then his dear friend is a superhero. Okay.
Think about it. When the superhero leaves, then he gets an entourage of Nona, the Girl Scout, the hefty kid.
Sure.
Well,
Brayden, he had a posse all of a sudden.
Just keep spreading those conspiracy theories out there. Actually, that's a pretty good one. All right, Nostalgians, if you've enjoyed this episode of the 90s Rewind Report and you would like to come on and talk about a topic, please send us an email to the 90s Rewind Report at gmail.com. Nate, would you like to end our podcast?
Before you drift off, Nostalgians, be sure to tell your friends about us so that we can bring a little 90s to their nightmares. And be sure to leave a comment on anything in the 90s that still haunts your dreams. Welcome to Nostalgia.
And I'm going to let you edit that last bit out.